talking to a few of my followers, I was checking in with them. What is it that they'd like to listen to, or who is it that they think I should bring on my podcast? And a lot of them came back and said they'd like to see me speak to someone to raise some awareness on mental health and wellness. And as someone who has dealt with people, close to me who've been going through this, I thought this is something that should be very interesting and for me to speak on. I, for one, know that there is a lot of stigma surrounding this. And if there is anything at all that I can do to create a bridge for people to understand what this is, then this is a path that I'd like to tread on. Today on the podcast with me is Pooja Srinivasa Raja. She is the founder of the Transfer Mind Foundation and the New Parenting Platforms. She's a social entrepreneur who's created these platforms, having gone through the stress and anxiety herself. And this is her way of giving back to the people who are struggling with the same. Pooja is also the director at her family-run business, Adyar Anand Bhavan, which is one of the largest restaurant chains in South India. This just goes to show that no matter how rosy it may all seem, life and its challenges still catch up with you. Thank you so much for joining me today, Pooja. I hope our conversation is going to be very enlightening and useful to our listeners today.
Thank you so much, Lahida, for this opportunity because when I entered in this field and when I started working on this, there weren't much people were interested to have conversations about mental health. There was still a huge stigma. So I'm really glad you're able to take this as a topic and help all your listeners and some of others. So I'm happy to be a part of this.
Pooja, you have these two platforms, Transfer Mind and New Parenting. From what I understand, they both cater to to be able to deal with mental stress. So what is the difference between those two platforms and, what do these platforms offer?
So Transfer Mind is completely for mental health, and it's not just any gender specific or age specific, because I strongly believe mental health is for all. And I think it's extremely important that people start understanding that because when I started this journey, even before I understood what mental health was, I myself had a lot of apprehensions towards mental health. I really thought that therapies or mental health is for people with extreme mental troubles, and I myself, claim people lunatics for them to go and reach out for support and all of that. So Transfer Mind is a platform that I started to speak about mental health and to bridge the gap between a commoner and the professional. Because I understood with my experience that there's a lot of misunderstanding or lack of information that was necessary for a person to understand what mental health was for the first step. And then to understand if they are going through something or if they need help or how they can support themselves, whether or not they have depression or anxiety or any form of mental illnesses. So, and for people to reach out to a professional, right, in India, they weren't okay to reach out to a professional through Practo or any other platform to just randomly browse for a psychologist and go there because this is something more personal, right? So they wanted, so there was always an apprehension towards reaching out for help because they always thought when you go speak to a person or if you're going to speak to a therapist, there's chances all these secrets to be let out and the world might know it or for them to itself speak to another person, true. Right?
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that I felt from my circle and my experience because when the moment I started opening about my experiences with whatever I went through, I understood these were the troubles that people are facing. So I wanted to basically build a platform to bridge these gaps using my own personal story. Because since I'm coming from this family background, like you started, people always assume that life is perfect. Yeah. When you have money,
what could go wrong?
Everything is but that's not how it works, right? So the more and more I started opening up, people were able to resonate with me more, and they were, more open to receiving help. So then they wanted to. Then I felt they needed a space to reach out for help. So I personally, started working with a lot of mental health professionals, shortlisted around 250 professionals all over India.
I started out with just a couple of them.
Yeah, so it was every single day we just kept adding people. Initially, it was just through known contacts, whoever were a psychologist or counselors in the known circle, I was talking to them. And then I did personal verification of everyone's certification, experience and all of that. And that's how then the team grew. Initially, it was just me. Then I had a couple of people working for me. So we had a criteria of checking what kind of basic necessities were there for us to make the audience feel trusted, like, that this is the right professional, you can always like, reach out to them. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't even have to let us know that they're reaching out to this person, because we just
Yeah.
list all the information that's necessary. If so, for example, if I want to, like, today I decide that I need to do something about, whatever I'm going through, I
Yeah.
can just go to my website, and there are n number of contacts that are listed, and I
Yeah.
can just pick and choose, and I can just call them directly. So me
Mm-hmm.
being the center platform, I don't even have to know that someone's, like, having a process towards
Yeah.
reaching out for help. And apart
How,
from that, we run support group.
so how about neo parenting?
So neo parenting is a platform for the parents, because, again, me being a mother of 3-year-old, when I was learning a lot about this, figuring out this whole parenting thing, I kind of felt there was a lot of platforms that were available for the parents to train the kids, or to teach the kids what needs to be done and
Yeah.
how to bring up the child and all of that. But I kind of felt our generation is trying to be the cycle breakers of so many things, right? With experience and exposures that we have, irrespective of age.
Mm-hmm.
Being a parent from this Indian society, there are a lot of unnoticed patriarchy stuff that is still going on. So
Uh-huh.
it begins at home, right? For a child to grow, irrespective of whatever fancy school you put your child in, and whatever crazy things you teach the child,
Mm-hmm.
every basic thing begins at home, and
Yeah.
that's the adult they're going to grow up to be. So for
Mm-hmm.
that, me as a parent, I need to like unbreak and unlearn a lot of things that
Mm-hmm.
I have been learning or observing from my own surroundings, knowingly
Yeah.
or unknowingly.
Yeah.
So again, neoparenting is a platform bringing in professionals from different parts of the country who are actually doing similar work
Okay.
on different fields of parenting.
Okay. So that is
For example, sex
exclusively for
education,
parenting,
mental
but
health.
not necessarily parents who are going through any sort of stress.
No, it
Okay.
includes mental health as well. It also includes
Okay.
sex education. We're
Okay.
trying to normalize LGBTQ, like, how parents can educate themselves about it, and a lot of different topics for the parent exclusively. So there
Okay.
will not be any sessions of anyone telling how to do this for your child, but
Okay.
as parents, what are the things you need to educate yourself with?
Okay.
So that's about neo parenting.
So you were saying that when you had been through a lot, so that you were able to resonate with the kind of people that were coming for seeking help on your Transformind platform. So could you briefly take us through your journey, like what you've been through and how it has culminated to these platforms today?
So for me, it all started with my experiences from my teen, right? So
Mhm.
I've been through a lot of body shaming.
Mhm.
I'm already like 6 foot tall. So being a girl, when you're so tall, it's like a huge deal, right? So anywhere I go, the first question anyone says is like, "Are you sure you're going to find a groom?" And how's it going to look when you date, or like in a relationship with someone who's shorter. So even before I had any like emotions of dating a person or something like that, it was so strongly registered in the mind that height really matters. And for
Yeah.
me, I have to end up with a guy who's tall, and it's impossible. So that was always been like a huge point in my life. And second was after I hit my puberty and all, I had a lot of physical changes, and I put a lot of weight
Oh, okay.
during my teens. So again, like being a woman, being a girl, when you're in teens, you need to like look in a certain way. And
Yeah.
again, you're already so tall, and if you're going to be so fat, then no one's going to like you. So
Or,
I
to
was
say to I like I don't know if it's my space to button, but I was almost going through the same thing. Like I'm not 6 foot tall,
okay.
but then I was always the bigger person in a group, like amongst my peers, amongst my cousins, and I always stood out like a sore thumb. And I was also always been called these names, all these different names that they like put you on, these negative comments. It actually puts you down so much. You self doubt. You do a lot of self
Absolutely.
doubt.
Absolutely. So there was a point where, like, even before someone would mock at me, I made sure that I mock at myself so that, like, I can just um, not get hurt beyond a point. So people normally call me lighthouse and say a few, like, call me with few terms. So even before, like, even if someone's complimenting my height, like, yeah, I know I look like I'm like, lighthouse, it's
Oh,
fine,
that
I'm
is a
cool and all of
defensive
that.
way of tackling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been a day that I've gone back home and cried. Like, there have been days where I feel like, why was I born? Like, why was I born to a family like this? Because my mom was short, but my dad was tall. But I
Okay.
think after my college, or I think after my school, I started outgrowing my father. So that was even worse, right? So,
Yeah.
because before that, I keep telling people, okay, my father's tall, so I'm tall. But now I can't say that anymore.
Hmm.
So it was like super. how do I put it? It was so stressful for me. Beyond a point, I just stopped looking at myself in the mirror. It
And
was
it's
just
nothing
too
that you
much for
can do
me.
as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And even for my weight, I started having these eating disorders. I went through bulimia when I was in college.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't know what bulimia was back then.
Yeah, obviously. I
So I
mean, like,
tend to like,
I think, I think myself have come to, read and understand these terms, what, like 5 to 8 years ago. So when I was also in college, when I was going through all these ridicule at home, I used to have, like, in a very tacky, I don't know even if it is appropriate to say here, but in a very tacky way, when our college friends, when the boys would hit on me, I used to find a bizarre sense of being validated. Okay, maybe it is not as
yeah,
bad as my family says it is. Okay, there has to be something, right, that's going on. So it's, you find these weird balances in life, and you blur the lines of what's wrong and what's right.
absolutely. Because of all these self-doubt that people have put on
Yeah.
us, right? So I remember my very first relationship in my life was extremely toxic because right at the point where you
You were
said
so
a person
desperate.
liking me,
Yeah.
yeah, another person liking me was more than enough for me than the way he
Yeah.
treated me. So
Yeah.
that was extremely toxic, and I had to
You
like
were
go
ready
through
to
it for
take on
like months.
anything.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was doing like crazy shit. Like today, when I think about it, I feel so sorry for putting myself through all that nonsense just for the sake of getting a validation in another person.
Exactly. Yeah. That's
Just to
what happens.
feel loved, just
Yeah.
to feel accepted. But end of the day, I wasn't even accepted or loved. Like I was just being used, and it took a
Use.
long time for me to understand. And then it took even more longer time for me to heal from that. So it was just like a crazy journey. End of the day, I feel like I've been doing a lot of things for others, like for sake of
Compromising on your
others to
happiness.
understand me. Yeah, sake of others to understand me, sake of others to accept me. But I think this whole journey has, like, on very weird ways brought me down to therapy. Where because at some point of time I did feel helpless and I didn't want to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so after, especially after I had my child
Mm-hmm.
3 years back, that's when that was actually the turning point for me because I felt I need to be myself. I need to have myself under my control
Mm-hmm.
for me to be there for my daughter. And that's
Yeah.
extremely important because it's
Mm-hmm.
not fair for me to, as a mother, to do that to another child, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not fair. So that's how this whole therapy journey started for me. And even when I started, like,
So all
taking,
throughout, like, throughout till you had your daughter, you were going through this, like, from your teens, right? From your teens, you had started at.
yes,
So
you
how
won't
do
believe
you?
I did. So I didn't know I was going through bulimia until I saw the series called The Story of Diana on Netflix about Princess Diana, where she went through bulimia. So there
Oh.
was an episode where they showed how she went through, like what were the symptoms and how she felt and all, which was exactly what I went through. And that's when I had a conversation to my therapist saying that actually triggered me a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to take a session after 2 days of seeing this episode because my therapist was not available. And those 2 days was horrible for me. I kind of felt I was reliving those moments and my, body was different. My mind was different. I was completely off. I couldn't speak about this to anyone. I didn't know. I was scared. What if I went through bulimia? Like,
So, but
and I didn't know
while
how I
you
got
were
through it.
going through it.
No, that was before.
Okay.
So I still have no idea how I got out of it. So so that's when I spoke to my therapist, and then when we were slowly talking about the symptoms I had, and then what were the things I kept doing, my sleep cycle, and all of that. That's when she said, "It looks like you've also gone through the phase, but it's not there anymore. So just feel safe in the space where you are right now."
So how did you
And for
finally
me
end
to
up at the therapist?
So with my therapist, so I was just speaking to my mom one day saying that I'm just having all these thoughts
Okay.
and I don't know what to do about it. And she was the first person to tell me, like, why don't you try therapy? And I was extremely angry about it. I
You
was
were
like, are
angry.
you calling me? Yes,
Okay.
I was angry because that's exactly the point. Like we have like so much exposure, so much education
Yeah.
and all of that, but we're not equipped to live a basic, like we are not equipped about a basic necessity of life because
Yeah.
mental health is always like brushed under the rug. People don't speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I haven't even heard the term mental health until I started therapy. I don't know what therapists would do. I don't know what would happen when I go meet a therapist. And I
Mm-hmm.
also felt logic was very stupid for me. Like just going and talking to a person about what you're going through, how is it
Mm-hmm.
going to help was my question. I was trying to be too logical about it. And
Yeah.
my mom also didn't have too much awareness about it, but she just knew that it's okay to like go speak to someone so that
Wow.
you'll
I
feel
mean,
comfortable and
that is something,
fine with
in
that.
this, for
Yeah,
ideally, you would expect people in the senior, a generation above us, not to understand this. And for her to actually
yeah,
advise you to go and seek help is, I think that itself is, shows how progressive she is and her thoughts are.
absolutely. So that's like very true. So I always owe it to her for
Yeah.
whatever I've been doing every single day. And like when I asked her, like, how do you know about so many things? Like how did you know that
Yeah.
it's okay to go to a therapist? So how didn't you have that mindset that it's bad to go speak to someone,
Yeah.
or like your family values are gone, or like people would judge you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So she herself
It
didn't have
all
an
boils
answer. She
down to
was like,
that always, right? Like people would judge us.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that is one of
I
the biggest
myself had that
stigmas we have
about
in
me.
accepting this.
Even I had that about me. I was like coming from a family background, like where people know the brand.
Yeah.
What if the therapist goes out tomorrow and say that, oh, this brand's daughter is my client? Like it's a
Yeah.
huge deal.
It
That
could be
was a huge
leverage
deal.
for her. That's how you would think it, right? She would
Yeah,
leverage it
that's what I
to,
thought.
yeah, for her career.
So then I got to understand for the practice, for the ethical reasons, they're not supposed to disclose all these informations. And for
Yeah.
me
Okay.
today, even if she does, it doesn't affect me because
Yeah.
I want to be authentic to myself. I want to be raw and relatable to people.
Mm.
Because the more and more I share my stories, I understood that people needed a voice
Hmm.
for them to like feel validated
Yeah.
and to understand that it's
Mm.
not something that they're alone going through. Because since we don't talk about this to anyone, people have the feeling that it's just for them. Like only
Yeah.
I'm going through this.
Exactly.
Everyone around the world is happy,
Yeah.
and this social media is just adding too much fuel to the fire, saying
Mm.
that everything in the world is perfect, right?
Yeah.
So the more and more I started being authentic, I made sure that I kind of took up this responsibility for myself and made sure that every single content, so I don't plan my contents also for social media. I just put whatever I feel like,
Hmm.
whenever I feel like. I don't practice specific timings. I don't I don't look for shares or reposts or stuff like that. I just put
Yeah.
whatever I feel like putting. And I also want that space with people to always they can like text or talk to me about anything.
Hmm.
So I was able to evolve as a person through this journey. So more than this platform healing anyone, I would say this
Yeah.
has healed me a lot. It
Mm.
still is with whatever I've been
Yeah.
dealing with, right? So
Yeah.
that's
So, but
how.
as growing up, you were not able to identify, okay, that these were the issues that I'm going through. These were probably the anxiety or the panic attacks that I was going through.
No, not at all. That was the most hardest part, and I think
To
that
accept
was
it
one
at
of the
this,
reasons that.
right? Yeah, at this stage, to accept that. How was I
Yeah.
so naive and
No,
not
I feel
aware?
so bad. I mean, I feel so sorry for my younger self, and I think for it because I can still feel the suffering. Like I can still understand what I went through back then, and it
Mm.
could have just taken one step to just speak to someone else. I
Yeah.
didn't even speak to my parents about it
To have
because I
had a
always
whole
felt
different
anyway.
life, a childhood, probably.
But I'm also thankful for this experience in a way because I
Okay.
don't think I would have gotten here without any of those
Experience.
past experiences.
Hmm.
Because somewhere I was always been able to fight and get back, though
Hmm.
that phase was really hard. I
Hmm.
was somehow able to come out. I didn't have like an action plan of like, okay, I'm going through this, let me do this and come out of this. But somehow I figured out ways to pull myself together and then, work back. So even today, when I'm going through something or when I feel that I'm low, I always have the hope that this is just a phase and I know I'll get through this. I think I'm here today because of all those experiences. I know that I've done this for myself and I will continue doing that for me.
So when you
So, yeah.
thought that you had you had come out of this, you got married, and then you must have thought that you were in a better space, and then suddenly when you had your child, when you had your daughter, you went back into the dark phase again. But you also said that you wouldn't identify it as postpartum depression. Then what else could that be then?
So I got married at a very early age, right?
Oh.
After my undergrad, I got married again for the very same reason that the groom was like, taller than me. And
So that was
so
probably your biggest criterion.
that was the only criteria we all had. And I also felt validated that finally, okay, this is happening. And
Oh.
it was like a dilemma in my head always because I wanted to pursue my education and I wanted to be financially independent and then think about marriage and stuff like that. But it just happened the other way around.
You
And
found a
I
tall
was
guy.
too
Now
young.
everything, and everything is put to the side.
Yeah. And I mean, I did feel that it was okay, but I felt like, okay, at least finally I found someone who was as tall as me. That was like my purpose of my entire life, right? To find someone who was like
The
taller than
purpose
me
that,
and
the
get.
society has imprinted on you.
Yeah, so I felt like, okay, it's okay to like make these compromises for this.
Mm.
So but after that I kind of felt it was a huge responsibility for my age and I was not prepared for all of that.
Okay.
And I had my own battles within to understand what was going around me, what is expected out of me.
Mm.
Is it right, is it not right, am I doing things too much, or are the expectations too much on me, and am I
Mhm.
pushing myself for like nothing or something that doesn't make sense. So there were a lot of confusion. And again, these
Conflicts.
weren't something that I couldn't have conversation with anyone, right? Because immediately they'll be like, oh, something's wrong with you. Oh, something's happening to you. You're not grateful and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So to divert myself, I did start my master's after I got married, after a year of my marriage. But I also got pregnant 4 months after I started my master's. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to take a break, come back to Chennai, and then I had my child. And after that, I so my this the depression I went through was not postpartum, but for the fact that I was too young and people around me were like setting their careers up or pursuing higher education was the
Okay.
stuff that was troubling me. Again, watching things in social media, you
See,
know.
this is how you compare your life. You find your happiness, you find your sorrows rather in what others are doing. This is such a complex
Absolutely.
space to be.
There have been like nights where I just scroll through my friend's profile and just like, sit and cry. Like my daughter was absolutely fine. My pregnancy was super smooth. My entire labor was only for 4 hours. No
Wow.
complaints, no regrets, nothing at all.
Mhm.
Nothing was planned. God's grace, everything went extremely well. And feeding and everything was absolutely fine for me. So there wasn't like any traumatic experience or anything hard physically or mentally for me. But this thought after my delivery, so every single night when I had to stay up to feed the child, obviously I
Mhm.
tend to watch videos, something on social media, right? That's when I kind of felt the reality was hitting me that
Yeah. That you were
everything
at
is
a
too soon.
everyone had moved on with their life and you were just stuck in the night. I mean, like
Yeah,
all the dark thoughts when they emerge.
extremely. It was super, super hard for me. Like I couldn't think of a day that I didn't cry to sleep. In those particular few months. And that's when the journey of therapy started. Like, because of all these emotions, there was a phase where I started feeling suicidal. I had extreme anxieties and I can't express it outside because when people come and visit me, they're like, you have a child, you're so blessed, you're so young, and you got everything done at a very young age. So you'll have a peaceful, like, when you grow old, you'll be very peaceful, your daughter will be settled. So you can't really go tell anyone, like, I understand this, but I'm also feeling this way, right? It's like you yourself are like putting yourself in a guilt feeling that what
Mm.
if people judge that I'm not grateful for this child,
Yeah.
which wasn't the case. I didn't have postpartum blues. I
Mm.
was absolutely fine with having a child. I was super grateful. I am till date. But that particular phase where my mind was tricking me into thoughts like this, and I wasn't able to figure things out, right?
Mhm.
So then I was like, why did I do this? For who did I do this? And is it really worth? Will I be able to? Because I didn't finish my master's as well. 9, 10 months didn't hit me so hard that I didn't like, I had to break my master's and have a child. But when all these thoughts were coming back to back, it was a huge deal for me.
Yeah.
So that's when I remember, I think there was a day when I told my mom about all these. I was just crying to her. And that's when she said, I always understood that we're going through something, but I didn't want to ask you and then make you feel bad. But
Yeah.
you didn't look fine. So I'm glad you're having this conversation with me. And that's when she said, why don't you like speak to a therapist and all of that? So it actually took an entire week for me to process this. And because the thoughts were so hard that it ended up being suicidal thoughts, that's when I thought, okay, it's not safe for me, it's not safe for the child.
Mhm.
It's like, it's okay to just get help, and it's fine if people are going to say things about me. Let me just try this out. If it's
Yeah.
working, it's working. If not,
Yeah.
then I'll have to just deal with it,
I'd
right?
like to take that point where you said, you took a week to understand, to accept that, you needed help. And,
Yeah.
and I think that is a point that we can build on. No matter how educated or how progressive we think we are, there are certain things that we can always seek help for, right? We should be able to communicate. I think that is one of the biggest things, biggest hurdles a lot of people face, that they're not able to address their issues.
But I feel that's how we have been brought up in a society as well. Like, it's always expected out of us to feel fine or pick ourselves up and not be vulnerable, right? Vulnerability was always looked up as a sin or a crime. You always have to like deal with your shit, but when you're coming out of the door, you need to look fine, you need to do things. It's
Yeah, you need to
that's
have
your
that
job.
polished
Otherwise,
front.
yeah, otherwise you're
Especially, I
again
think
being
in
judged
your
for that.
case, coming from your family background, the pressure on that would have been even more.
Yeah, because like I said, so even after I spoke to people that I went through this and then therapy has helped me, there are people who till date say that you're not grateful for what you have. You're just finding reasons to be sad,
You
and that's why
cannot,
you're like this.
really
Yeah,
impress, or you cannot have everyone understand what you're going through. If, like, I think you have to set your priorities
absolutely.
to help yourself. Mm.
So, see, what one part of what they say is very true. Like I am way blessed than measure most of the people, right? Like if you have
Yeah,
to look
absolutely, yeah.
as a society as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
that's still there, but that's not how my mind works, and that's something not in my control, right? So
Mm-hmm.
these are like triggers that I kept picking up, and the interesting part of the therapy was I was able to understand a lot of my feelings, when I was an adult, were linked to how I felt when I was a child. I started doing a lot of inner child healing work, which was super exhausting by itself,
Mm-hmm.
but tremendous healing work it is. And
Mm-hmm.
every single adult, right, even today, you and me, whatever we feel like, whatever we believe in, are things that have has a huge impact on what we have experienced in our childhood. So these are concepts that not everyone knows at all, right? I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know until I started therapy, and I didn't know um, small things in childhood had a huge impact of how we react these ways. Like I've had sense of abandonment. I've had like so many issues that I didn't know I felt when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
But now it made a lot of sense for the way I started reacting to things.
Mm-hmm.
And today I just don't care. Like I don't give a damn to anyone saying anything about me. I'm just completely opposite of how I was 3.5 years back. There are people who still judge me in front of my face or behind my back for the work I do. There are people who still say that I'm doing this for just for fame and just like because mental health is a trend, I'm just speaking about it and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, be it. If that's what you feel, I don't mind. But if any, like, if at least one person is benefiting out of the work that I do
Mm-hmm.
for the years to coming together, I think that's more happy. And beyond all of that, this is healing me. So
Yeah.
I'm more than happy to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm more comfortable with my skin. I'm more comfortable about my thoughts and my belief and all of that. And I think therapy plays a huge role for that.
And you are also more comfortable seeking help and, advising help to people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, because part of my ignorance, when I ask you, when do you know who you should see, like a psychiatrist, a counselor, or a psychologist? You're talking about a therapist, which I believe is a counselor.
Yeah. So, see, to be very honest, I feel every single one of us should, like, have a therapist or a counselor to support us.
Hmm. So,
In
but when
this
do you
day and
know
age,
which case goes to a psychologist or which case goes to a psychiatrist, or a counselor for that matter?
so, so psychiatrists are doctors who prescribe medicines for your mental illnesses,
Hmm.
and
Not
psychologists.
not for your mental health and, like, all the others, like, for someone like
So
you.
counselors or therapists are people who normally the people that I've been speaking about, right? Who you can just go speak to them about your issues and they will support you through the journey. It's not someone who will give you solutions for your problems,
Or
but someone who will be able to
medications.
mix. Yeah, they can't give you medications as well.
Oh, okay.
So when you go to a counselor, if they know that you're going through something, for example, insomnia, which is very common these days,
Mm.
they can't
Yeah.
prescribe an antidepressant. They
Okay.
can't give you medicines for anxiety. They can give you breath works if you have a mild anxiety to like
Mhm.
heal yourself. But if something extreme where you definitely need a medical intervention, only a psychiatrist can do that for you.
Mhm.
A psychologist cannot help you on that.
Mhm. So, like, when you had these issues all throughout your life and you were seeking help, who do you, like, and now you have this platform, what do you think is the most common issues, like, that you would have faced on this platform that have been reaching out to you for help?
So the last 1.5 years during the COVID, period, right? It's hugely been anxiety and grief counseling that we've been experiencing. Especially the second wave in India was very horrible. Where
Okay.
we lost lives here, right? So there was a
Mhm.
lot of grief counseling, and the first wave as well. First wave, we didn't know what the virus was. We didn't know what is going to happen. We didn't know when this is going to end. Every single day, the news kept changing. Look, one day they said
Yeah.
that was going to be like this, and next day it's just a completely contrast news, and we were all shut in the house for the first time. Businesses were hit. Families, like all the families put together in a house, was a huge deal to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when the kid with the kids, a lot of people had newborn kids or younger children to deal with. No helpers at home. Like we all had to like send them out. So it was
Yeah.
extremely anxious and stressful for all of us. And most of them didn't understand why they were feeling that way. Most of them didn't understand that it was anxiety for them.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who had, because the sleep routine, the entire lifestyle changed for all of us, right?
Yeah.
We just slept at random hours, we ate at random hours. There
Yeah.
were a lot of people
Just
who
confined
gained
to the
weight,
four
and they had
walls between. Yeah.
a lot of people had body, image issues as well because they gained weight during the
Mhm.
lockdown. That was massive after after the lockdowns were lifted here after 8 months.
Oh,
When people
wow.
started going to work, when they weren't able to fit in the uniforms, when they weren't able to fit in the office clothes.
Hmm.
So when we started this therapy platform, right, these were the kind of cases, like we could see the range of cases varying as a bunch, like, people were falling under different categories.
Oh, okay.
And it was, but the second wave, we felt very helpless. We had a
Mm.
group of people where we provided free counseling for them. We collaborated with a college called Montfort College in Bangalore, which is one of the best in terms of mental education.
Mm-hmm.
So we used the professional support and all of that, and we provided free counseling during the second wave
Uh-huh.
as a bit of contributing to the society during the hard times. And the amount of grief, like, there were families where like two, three people were passing away in the family, where one
Yeah.
or two were left. It was horrible. Like, therapists themselves were stumbling at one point of time. They themselves lost like family members who were
Yeah.
close to them. So it was just horrible. And beyond a point, we were just so like, we just had to give everything to the God and just pray.
Mm.
That was
Just
the
give
maximum we
in.
could do.
Mm.
Apart from all these medical stuff that we're talking about, counseling or therapy, I think uh, it was a different level of experience that we had during those periods.
Hmm. Yeah. So, just to go back a little bit. So, when you started your therapy, how was it after, like, how long did it take for you to come out of it and then get back into your normal life?
So for me, I was still doing whatever I was doing on routine, but for me to actually be there when I was meeting my therapist, when I was speaking stuff, it took a first couple of sessions for me to believe that this is going to work, or for me to believe that this is the help that I'm looking for.
And maybe because
Because
you were also holding back inside because you weren't very
yeah,
excited about this idea about going and seeking help, right? Hmm.
yeah, because I knew I needed help, but I didn't know if this was the right help that would support me. But I just want to give it a try because I didn't have any other option. So I was just
Yeah.
sitting there. She was asking me all these questions, and I was still sharing experience, but I was just like not present. It was
Yeah.
always like,
And
is
you were
this really
holding
going to
back. You
work?
didn't want to, share the
Yeah.
intricate details of all that you were
No, I
going through.
shared all the details. I did tell
Yeah.
her what and all I was going through. So I didn't have any hesitation there, but
Okay, you
I didn't
didn't.
believe that that was going to help me. I didn't believe, like, just telling her that I'm not able to sleep or just telling her that I'm feeling things. Like, how can she help me? She can just be like, it's okay, my life is like this, and you just have to move forward. I just thought it'll be more of advice or lecture or motivation speech than like
Yeah.
the practice. That was my assumption. The
Hmm.
first few sessions, she gave me like a lot of homeworks to do
Okay.
because I think she was able to figure out that I wasn't taking this seriously.
Okay.
And of course, I didn't. Like the first few sessions, I always like giving her reasons that no, I was feeding my daughter and I was like busy with this or that. And I was obviously lying. But then she figured out and then she said, see, if you really want to do this for yourself, you really have to be present. And it's a choice that you have to take
Hmm.
because it's not just about money and time. It's you're just putting yourself down. And that really like hit me hard. And
Hmm.
that was the first time I told her that I don't believe that this is going to work for me because I don't know how this works. And
Yeah.
that's when she said, you just trust in the process. Just
Hmm.
go ahead with this for like a couple of sessions. And if it doesn't work, you please feel free to stop the session. If it works, it works. And
Okay.
that's when I was like, okay, fine, I'll just give this a shot. And there were like very basic stuff that I had to like, it was more of an introspective journey for me to dig deep into myself because that's the most scariest part for any of us to just actually feel what you're feeling and actually acknowledge what you're feeling
And put
is
it
the
into words.
scariest thing that you can ever do. So no matter what we speak, to ever sit and think about what I'm feeling right now and why am I feeling right now, and then how does that make me feel? It's super scary. There
And
are
how
there are
does,
good
like,
days, there are extremely
also
bad
you
days.
would think, how does saying this out loud make me seem? Like,
Initially, I was very so after these practices, right? It was very hard for me to vocally tell her things. So she made me write all those things,
oh,
so that I don't have to like tell her. So she made me write few. So she gave me like pointers to think and sit and write about. So that's when I started the practice of journaling a lot. So it
hmm,
was like initially it was like this hand holding session, like constantly telling me do this, do that. Where beyond a point, I was able to understand what was comfortable for me, what was not comfortable for me, to extent to which I can push, and days where I have to just be like but I have to comfort myself and take it easy. There are a few days like that. So, like I said, I was able to understand myself more. I was able to um, like support I was looking for outside was something I needed. Like I was always there for me. I just need to understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And the more and more I kind of felt the more and more I started doing this for myself, I was able to attract more good energies towards me.
Mm-hmm.
Like things that I was actually longing for came to me beyond what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment when I didn't, I was actually, when I stopped looking for it, I started getting it more.
Yeah.
So the
So
journey was so
hard.
magical for
Yeah.
me.
So, and then how long
And
did
I
it
still
take for
do
you to get
follow
back on
therapy.
track? Oh, so you're still doing therapy?
Yeah, I still do therapy. Like I said, I strongly now believe that, everyone needs therapy because whether you're going, so un- till you wait for something to happen to you and then going to a therapist speaking about depression and anxiety, it's always better you keep your mental health on check, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
like you go to a general practitioner 6 months once a year to just get your health checkup done. So you can always have a call with them or online consultation with them or like a face-to-face session once in a week or twice in a week. It's obviously only going to help you. There's never going to be a downfall in any ways.
Mm-hmm.
So now I keep telling people who I meet that my daughter's like 3.5 years old now. So when she's
How
going to
long?
turn
So you
7 or
started this
8,
soon after your delivery?
yeah, I think 6 months after I had my child, five or 6 months. Yeah.
Meanwhile
I mean, on
completing
and
your
off.
masters as well, so slowly you were getting back on track doing the
Yes.
things that you wanted to do, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
So therapy gave me a huge confidence that I can, like, it will be hard, but I can do this for myself. And it's important for me to do this for myself because it mattered a lot for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
getting a master's for myself was a huge deal for me. So therapy really helped me to understand that. And luckily, I had a lot of support. Great.
Mm.
I'm so grateful that my daughter was super young. She was 7 or 8 months when I left her. I had to do my master's in Singapore while I was
Okay.
living in Chennai. So I had to leave her here. I used to travel back and forth to finish my master's. And then, I think right after the lockdown started, we had a couple of online classes, and I had to do the entire thesis when the lockdown was happening, but I had like no support to, like just the family, not like previous
Mm-hmm.
support they had. So it was very challenging. It was super stressful, but I'm very glad that I was able to do that for myself because
Mm-hmm.
that was like a huge, huge deal for me,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah.
So to understand that that was a huge deal for me, therapy has helped me to do that.
Yeah, and therapy also helped you see through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So once you started this platform, and you said you had only a couple of other people who are supporting you, a couple of other psychologists who are on this platform with you. So were you also taking these cases? Were you able to help the people reaching out for help?
No, so I'm not a professional to counsel or anything. So I was
Yeah.
very strong in setting boundaries there because there were few people who wanted me to do that, looking at the way that I speak about mental health, but that doesn't, like, it's not fair for me to do that for the client of, knowing how the field works.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
I am going, doing a couple of courses,
Because obviously a
not
lot
just
of
on,
people, that this is one of the reasons I was thinking maybe I should, before getting a professional to come and speak with us on the podcast, I wanted to speak to someone who's actually gone through it, who's actually experienced it, and in a beautiful way you've challenged all your stress and all your depression, all your anxiety into these platforms. So it's easy for people to connect and connect with you, rather than, when you
yeah,
first tell them to straight away, like you said, when you were first told to go to a therapist, it kind of takes you aback. Okay, I'm not that bad. Okay, maybe this is something I can manage on my own. But for someone
yeah.
like you to have this platform where you are saying, okay, knowing all this, like, being so exposed, being so educated, having, all this worldly knowledge, you were not able to, pinpoint on your own problems. I think a lot of people
Yeah,
can connect with that. That is one of the reasons, for people to identify what they're going through, the experiences, when they listen to you speak.
absolutely.
Yeah. So, and so then what did you do? Like, what do you do on your platform when people reach out to you, say that, okay, I'm not the right person, maybe, and you direct them to your.
Yeah, so I always tell them that, I will connect you with therapists who are in-house team who I know them personally. I know the kind of work they do. So I give them that as assurance. It's like a personal referral that I make.
Mhm.
And that way they feel comfortable. There are people like initially who always be like, no, I feel more comfortable speaking to you. I
Yeah.
said it's like
I would
I
think,
really can't help you. I
yeah,
really can't help you with
I
that.
could listen to you, but can't help you.
Yeah, I said if you just want the person to listen to whatever you're saying, I'm always there. But if you really want me to support you in any way, the best I can do is to refer you to someone. And there are options where you can do free therapy. There are options where you can, like, pay at a very nominal cost to do a therapy session for you. There are support groups that we are hosting. So we've given like multiple options. So I think it's best for you to figure a way to actually feel supported. But few people say that they also feel better when they just heard. So I think it takes some time for them to, like, understand, and
So
it's
would
not
you
easy.
be
It
like,
doesn't
if you
come.
see someone at this point, would you be able to understand that they're going through something, that, they have these issues? What would your advice be to
Not
someone?
really.
What would your advice be to someone who who is going through this but is afraid to seek help? Like you had
Afraid to seek help, is it?
yeah.
So that's the reason I say that therapy is something that everyone should do, like whether you
Okay, yeah.
have an
Not
issue
only
or
when you
not.
have an issue.
And there's, yeah, and like, what's there to be afraid? Like I said, it's for ethical reasons. No one's supposed to disclose whatever you're discussing in the room with the therapist until unless it's harming for the person that they need some medical help or things like that. And again, only with consent, So, and if therapy, and again, when you speak about this, right, not all therapists will be suitable for you. There will be places where therapist ideologies don't match with you, or you don't feel convinced with the person. So I
Okay.
feel like you need to find your soul therapist to,
Mhm.
like, actually continue the work that you want to do for yourself. And this doesn't end in just, like, 1 month or 2 months. It doesn't have a time frame, because you never know what happens when, and you never know what your triggers are. And I
Mhm.
feel even when you don't feel like you have a problem, it's always better to go and talk about your good emotions as well, on
Mhm.
how to deal with the good emotions, and how to, like, not get, not just carried away, but just to find that balance about handling things for yourself. Like
Mhm.
how you speak about being extremely angry. When you have anger issues, you go for the anger management sessions, right? So
Mhm.
similarly, when you're going through something good, you just need to know how you're going to balance it for yourself. What do you feel at that particular moment? What are the things that you feel grateful for? Like basic gratitude exercises.
Yeah.
These were things. So these are things I do even now, like, 3 years down the line. It's
Okay.
not that I meet her every single week, but I'm always, like, whenever I feel like I need something, I make sure I don't wait for something extreme to happen for me to say that I am going through depression or I feel I'm having anxiety.
Yeah.
I also had anxieties during the second wave,
Mhm.
because no matter how much I avoided listening to news, I had losses within the close family, friends, all of that. It did take a huge toll. There have been days where I couldn't sleep. I used to have extreme nightmares. So the
Mhm.
problem, we never know what happens when, right? So it's always like an up and down journey that keeps happening, and it's always better that you have an angel to support you
Yeah.
through the journey. You know that she or he is always there for you.
Yeah.
So
When
yeah.
you talk about the second wave, I know, like, there are a lot of people I know who were struggling with this. And from where I am from, we don't have this therapists or these counselors. So anything like to do. So someone very closely that I know, once she got hit with COVID, and she was very
Okay.
symptomatic, but then she struggled with this severe, severe mental trauma. And
Mm.
because, we don't have this probably the luxury of having a counselor or a therapist from where I am, she was, straight away taken to a psychiatrist. And that is
Okay.
why I was asking you, what is, like, when do you know who to consult? Because the moment you see a psychiatrist, okay, if you're not getting sleep, okay, here are some sleep medications. If you're not, like, and if it's something with the appetite, here's some appetite medicines. So the difference between having a counselor or therapist, someone you can speak to, someone who can understand what you're going through, that is, I think, a luxury that your platform is giving out today.
Yeah, because
Because the
I
moment you
think
see a
with Philip,
psychiatrist and you're taking all these medicines, you think, there is something wrong with you. And, like you were saying, it's for
yes,
lunatics, or it's for this, like, to
yes.
be in a mental hospital. It's there's obviously a lot of stigma around it anyway. And to make it worse is when you see a psychiatrist and you prescribe these medicines.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that you guys didn't have like a counselor or therapist
Yeah, I'm
for
like,
that matter.
it's very difficult
Okay,
to find one from where we are. Mhm.
okay. Because see, all these medications that you take, right,
Mhm.
are something that can help you momentarily. Again, like depending on the case, depending on the illness.
Mhm.
But for generally, like, when you have a lack of sleep because of your routine change or something like just to fix it for the momentary, I think it's not healthy as well.
Yeah.
Because mental health itself, not just mental health, your health as a whole, which includes your physical and your mental health, I think it has a lot to do with your lifestyle.
Mhm.
That's something extremely important that, unfortunately, with all the routine work that all of us have,
Mhm.
we don't prioritize more of that.
Mhm.
Sleep is extremely important. Having the 7 or 8
Yeah.
hours of sleep is extremely important. And for someone who's always on track with that, even if you miss 1 or 2 hours of sleep in your routine, you can actually feel how drained your body looks. Even if you've had
Yeah.
like 4 5 hours of good sleep, if you miss it 1 or 2 hours, it has a huge toll on
Mhm.
your, like, the way you process the next day, the way you, like, work the next day and all of that.
Yeah.
Food plays a huge role.
Mhm.
If people are having non-vegetarian, it's completely different. I'm a non-vegetarian eater as well, but I'm just saying that, like recently I read a study that people with or non-vegetarian eaters tend to have more anxiety than vegetarian eaters, because the animals are being like killed when they have this fear of scared and all of that, right? So that has some chemical reactions in the meat that we eat, and when we consume it, it tends to hit us as well. So
Mhm.
that was like, I was like, okay, but still it's too hard for me to like let go
To
of
give
my
up.
meat that
Yeah.
I need.
Yeah.
But like at least to find the balance, right? If you're someone who consumes alcohol, you need to find the balance. Like cannot like
Yeah.
completely
Everything is
separate
about
yourself.
this fine balance that you are
Yeah.
able to find.
So apart from therapy, I think it's extremely important for us to have this balanced lifestyle as well. To
Mhm.
have like a proper, how do I say, um, proper outcome. So just going to therapy and then coming back and doing all these nonsense doesn't help. It still
Yeah.
keeps
Yeah.
happening. Your anxiety still keeps happening. And just taking pills for a short time, it can
Mhm.
help you momentarily, but you can't always live in pills. Again, like, just stressing on the point that depending on the illness, but it's just like a
Mhm.
general anxiety that you have.
Yeah.
It's very important. So these are things that we are like, we owe it to ourselves. Our
Yeah.
body is doing so much for us. Our mind is doing so much for us.
Yeah.
These are like
Yeah.
basic controls that we need to have. And it's
To
extremely
respect the body
important.
that we have. Yeah. So that's what I was saying, like, when you have the luxury of, your therapist on the and on your website, the kind of treatment that we were getting, like, that was offered, it was very disheartening. It was very upsetting to see. And maybe like going forward, when someone listens to this, they know, okay, what is the help that they seek to, because
Yeah.
awareness plays a huge role in, letting people know what is missing and what is it that they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Pooja, for your time today. It was very enlightening. And I hope, a lot of people can take away from this conversation, because there's nothing like listening to someone who's experienced it and, having created this platform. It's an amazing job that you've done. And I hope, like, obviously, I don't wish you get a lot of clients on your platform, but I wish you're able to help lots more people. And obviously, spread a lot of happiness and joy with all the sweets at your Adyar Anand Bhavan.
Thank you so much, Tauhee, for this opportunity. Like I said, I was super excited when you said you want to do a podcast on mental health, because not many people still do it. And
Yeah.
not many people do it on the right way too, because we
Mm.
still, like today, everyone calls themselves a mental health advocate, or everyone speaks about mental health because it's a fancy term that's supposed to be used to build your credibility, unfortunately, again. But
Unfortunately.
I'm really happy. Yeah, I'm really happy you were able to, like, take this up. And I'm so grateful that you thought of me to, like, speak about my experiences.
Yeah,
So thank
because
you so much for
like I
creating this
said, yeah, I
platform.
wanted to come to someone who's experienced it and has channeled that into the right platforms. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Pooja.
Thank you. Thank you so much.